Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. At the moment, you can really see what exponential growth means in Germany. No, I'm not talking about our economy, obviously. I'm talking about a Far Eastern pathogen. The number of infected people doubled within the last few days. And while our dear Chancellor was busy promising everybody in the world the tax money of the German workers, and let's be fair here, she was also busy censoring and criminalizing the opposition in Germany. So as she had all these other priorities, she completely forgot about this crisis. And now that it is much too late to actually do anything, she and her entire administration is in full-blown panic mode. Now let's be clear here, the disease would have come to Germany anyway. But as this graph shows, it is a vital matter, a very critical question, whether or not it hits you with a high intensity or if the rate of new infections is just going up steadily. You see this pulse shape here, and it can be a high intensity, short-term, very steep pulse. That is the red one that you see here, or it could be more shallow and spread out, and that is the green one here. The dashed line symbolizes the capacity of our health system. That means how many doctors and nurses we have, how many hospital beds we have, etc. And I think everybody with more than 2 brain cells can easily understand that it is not very dangerous or very critical as long as a country such as Germany can afford to give everybody the care that they need in this situation. But all systems here are finite, and that means if the number of new infections per day exceed a certain threshold, then you actually come to a critical phase where you reach the boundaries, the limits of your capacity. And that means that doctors have to make tough choices. They actually have to withhold treatment from people and they have to send people away. And that is the time, and this is the scenario in which the mortality rate, of course, spikes. So this is something that the government now wants to communicate to the citizens of Germany, and I think that is perfectly understandable and perfectly sensible. The thing is just the distinction between these two scenarios that you see here is, of course, with and without preventive measures. The point where I have to criticize my government, however, is what should these measures have been and what are we discussing now? Now, as I said, they ignored the problem for a whole month. We had the whole month of February to prepare for this, and they did nothing. They reported about what's going on in the Far East and pointed the finger a little bit. There was sensationalism and also, well, it's a mixture of sensationalism and actually trying to downplay the danger of this pathogen. Now, what are we discussing in Germany now, in the middle of March, now that it is already too late and we have thousands of cases in our own country already? Now, of course, some of the measures are very, very straightforward, such as washing your hands and keeping a distance to people who cough and coughing correctly, etc., etc. Nobody really has an issue with that, I guess. Now we are discussing to shut down the schools and the universities, to cancel all public events ranging from soccer games to concerts, everything. Very soon, I'm sure shops will be closed, such is the case in Italy already, everything but pharmacies and places where you can buy food. Then today, Merkel even made a rather weird appeal to the German public. She said that Germans should avoid all social contacts. I think that is actually very funny considering that they spent decades undermining systematically the social fabric of Germany and all sorts of community structures and age-old institutions that we have here in Germany. Now they actually tell us to please avoid all social contact, as if that were still necessary. Another thing that is being discussed now is, of course, to limit the authority of the federal states. That means they want to transform Germany into a centralized state. They will, of course, justify that with the current crisis. Then you will have a major lockdown and basically the enactment of martial law in Germany. I think it doesn't require too much imagination to realize that this is seen by many people in Germany, or by many globalists actually, as a big chance, a once in a century chance maybe, to radically and drastically transform the country and even the continent maybe. I do not want to be alarmist, but I do want to say that we should be very vigilant. And while I always said that we have to take this disease seriously and that it is not just like a flu, I am also going to say now that these preventive measures, that means measures that take you from a red peak with high intensity scenario to this green peak with a low intensity, more spread out in time kind of scenario, could have been to close the borders for a certain time or to deny entry to people from certain destinations, such as China or the Far East in general. Had that been enacted in February already, this would have been enough, and maybe we could have arrived at a scenario in which the capacity of our health system would not have been reached or even exceeded. But God forbid we close the borders for a couple of countries. God forbid we deny rich Chinese people their vacation here in Europe. Now they're okay with shutting down schools, shutting down universities, and putting people under lockdown, putting our entire social, cultural, and commercial life to a screeching halt just because they didn't want to close the borders in February. Of course, we would have gotten the disease anyway, but once again, the difference is between a high intensity scenario and a more relaxed scenario in which the health system can keep up with the rate of newly infected people. There is a certain part of me, I won't deny it, that thinks that they did that on purpose, that they knew exactly what they were doing while they were putting focus on other topics in February and not deal with this crisis when it was still in East Asia and had not really reached Europe yet. And it is of course clear, because I also was introduced to some new measures at my job today. Some of them seem rather ridiculous and even drastic. But of course, nobody in management, as well as nobody in politics right now, wants to be the guy who in 6 months will be confronted with the accusation of not having done anything. They are all afraid now that they will be made responsible later on for what has happened, or for not reacting drastically or decisively enough. So to all those people who wonder why some of these measures all of a sudden are so drastic, it is just that they want to cover their precious behinds. People in authority are really afraid these days, or maybe have always been afraid, to be blamed for things later on, and now they want to cover all their bases. That is perfectly understandable and very symptomatic for our postmodern societies. So in short, Germany, just the same as Japan by the way, has done nothing while they still had the chance. They ignored the problem completely, and now that it is too late, they confront the public with very, very drastic last-minute measures, which are very extreme and which are having a direct impact on the lives of everybody in the country. People will not be able to leave their homes, children can no longer go to school, and you just cannot buy stuff anymore. Workers might be sent home, offices and factories will be closed, everything will come to a halt. And once again, I can't deny it, it seems like certain people actually wanted it this way. Let me know what you think about that. Be very vigilant and suspicious in these times, but most of all, be safe and stay healthy wherever you are. Servus, Kameraden.